I'm Dr. Dooley. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and as a person who's interested in mental health topics, social media, media, mental health, I totally missed a discussion around demon face syndrome. I guess when it first came around some months back, and I guess it's making the rounds again for some different reasons. And I thought I'd come on and talk about my thoughts about it from a psychiatrist perspective. So for those of you who don't know, there's a study, it came out in the Lancet. It was a case study of a person who presented to his doctors basically saying that he was seeing demon faces. And so what I'm going to do is include the paper here, a copy of it, so you can kind of have it for reference. He basically said that he was seeing these faces in people. And the interesting thing about the case study is that this person did have a diagnosis of PTSD. He had a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, right? So particularly bipolar disorder, that can be associated with psychosis, psychotic features. He had had a history of a significant head injury in his early 40s that he had to be hospitalized for. And 4 months before he started having these symptoms, he had suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. So here he is, he has an existing psychiatric diagnosis. He had a history of a traumatic brain injury and then had, suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. So these were all significant conditions and issues that could play into this presentation of him seeing this like demonic face. And so to make a long story short, they scanned his brain, saw that he had a cyst in a certain area and in the hippocampus, and essentially it was felt that may have contributed to this presentation. Even though I went and read a little bit more about it, it's not necessary that a person has an actual physical finding to develop this condition. And so the condition is called, it has such a long name. I'm gonna include it here in the caption, and also I'm gonna let Google pronounce it for y'all.
Prosopometamorphopsia.
And it's a very rare condition, but it's not a new condition. I also found an article that really summarized some historical information regarding the condition. So I'll include that here for anyone who's interested. There are a lot of different neurological conditions that can present in different ways where people have visual, like perceptual disturbances. So even though I'm not familiar with this one specifically, just having something like that that's like neurological basis is not foreign to me. But in some of the comments that I was reading from some videos, they were talking about how people had presented with this and had been misdiagnosed and treated with antipsychotics. And honestly, from a perspective of a psychiatrist, it makes sense that could happen because common things are common, right? This is a very rare neurological condition. So if somebody presents to me and tells me they're having a visual perceptual disturbance, am I going to think they have this very rare neurological problem, or am I going to think they have something that is more common, psychosis? Particularly if they have an existing mental health disorder, like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. These are all things that can have psychosis as a component of the condition. So the part I did want to add, though, is that there were several elements of his presentation that were not typical. Like psychiatry and neurology is so important for people to really take a thorough history and really listen to what people are telling them, because in general, people who have just like visual perceptual disturbances and nothing else. So when he presented, he did not have any other psychotic symptom. He was not disorganized in his thinking. He was not paranoid. He did not have delusions, like fixed false beliefs. Like for example, he didn't believe that like aliens were controlling him and controlling his mind and making him see demons or something. He was just seeing a distorted face. That is unusual. So typically if people are coming and they're having like a visual hallucination or a visual perceptual disturbance and they don't have nothing else, or even if they do have some other symptoms, I'm going to have a high suspicion that there might be some other underlying medical issue that could be going on that might be causing the visual perceptual problem. So, is a person delirious? Delirium is just kind of a catch-all term for people who have an altered mental status or confusion that's due to some underlying mental health, medical condition. So it could be in older folks, commonly a urinary tract infection. It can cause delirium. Seizures can cause delirium, medication side effects can cause delirium. So delirium is really just kind of a general catch-all term for like a confused, altered mental status that can come from a lot of underlying medical conditions. So my first thought is if I hear someone and they're telling me they have visual hallucinations, I'm going to be thinking, okay, does the person, have delirium? Sometimes people who have alcohol withdrawal can have visual perceptual disturbances too, like visual hallucinations. They can have other types of hallucinations too, but I might think like, could they have alcohol withdrawal? Are they actively under the influence of a certain substance? Because again, people particularly who are using maybe like amphetamines, like cocaine or abusing like meth, Sometimes they can have a lot of different kind of psychotic symptoms. People who are actually using hallucinogens, things that actually make you hallucinate, like PCP or LSD or something like that, they may have hallucinations that are visual. So a lot of times when we see hallucinations depicted, like in the media, we see it visual, and that's because there's a visual medium, right? If you've ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, John Nash, the mathematician who had psychotic disorder, if you ever see that, a lot of in the movie, it's kind of like it shows it as visual, right? Perceptual problem. But, more often people have auditory hallucinations. That is much more common for people with like schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders to have, as opposed to just having a visual hallucination. So if someone came to me and that's what their primary symptom was, I'm going to have a high level of suspicion to be for sure that something else isn't going on, as opposed to if they came to me with like paranoia and auditory hallucinations. That's a much more common presentation of like schizophrenia or another psychotic symptom than just having by itself a visual hallucination. There are a lot of different types of just neurological problems that can have visual hallucinations as a component of their condition. So there are certain types of seizures that can have some visual changes or perceptual disturbances. Of course, if people have tumors or, other growths like cysts, like this gentleman in different areas, they can manifest a visual disturbance. Sometimes there might be an issue actually going on with the eye itself, so you will want to be for sure that that's not part of it. Again, typically if I'm seeing a person having a problem with the eye itself, I would be worried about like a retinal detachment or, floaters or, some other thing that could really be urgent. So because you don't want to miss something that's actually, an eye condition or another neurological problem and say it's psychiatric, because there really might be something there underlying that could be treated, whether that's with other medications or surgery or a procedure or something like that. So you don't want to miss something that's underlying medical by saying it's psychiatric. So a lot of times people, when they're when they've had a break with reality, is that they don't realize that what they're seeing is not based in the real world. Whereas this gentleman had insight, like he's like, I'm here, I know I'm seeing something, it looks like this, but he was still in reality. Like he knew that something was wrong. He had insight to know that. Whereas people who have a thought disorder, we'll call psychotic disorder, and their thinking has like been fragmented and is not in touch with reality, they will think like demons are here on this earth, and they're like, following me, or maybe the government has a conspiracy against me, or the aliens have come here to do something to me. Like that's how they reason what's happening. Whereas this gentleman was like, oh, I'm seeing something. I think something might be wrong in my brain or with my eyes. Like he had insight to know that there was something possibly going on. I think another important aspect to this is to really consider the cultural elements, because, a lot of people, there are people who don't believe in demons and they don't have a frame of reference for that. Honestly, when I first looked at the picture, I don't know if I would say like a demonic face. Like I would say it's like a distorted face, but I don't know if like demonic is the word that I would use for that, But I think just considering being in a Western context and what demonic means and what it's associated with, everyone may not have that cultural reference. Some people don't believe in demons. They may not have a religious upbringing or other cultural reference where that's something and like those images would be associated with that. So it can be very easy to dismiss someone's report as just being part of their mental health or part of a psychiatric condition. Again, this gentleman did have, a condition, bipolar disorder, that can sometimes be associated with psychosis. But luckily the people that he saw didn't just dismiss his claims. They took time to listen and understand how what he was saying is different from a typical presentation of a psychiatric condition, and to help him get the workup that he needed.